Atomic habits: how tiny changes can transform a life. We often imagine that meaningful change begins with a dramatic decision. We promise ourselves that tomorrow will be different. We will exercise every morning, read more books, eat more healthily, or finally learn the skill we have postponed for years. Such resolutions can be intensely motivating, yet their effects frequently fade within weeks. The problem may not be a lack of determination. Rather, it may lie in our understanding of how change actually works. The idea of atomic habits, popularized by writer James Clear, offers a different perspective. The concept suggests that remarkable improvements can emerge from remarkably small actions repeated consistently. The word atomic is particularly revealing. It refers not merely to something small, but to something fundamental, a tiny unit that can nevertheless possess enormous transformative potential when combined with countless others. At first glance, the philosophy seems almost disappointingly simple. Reading 10 pages a day does not appear sufficient to transform someone into an intellectual powerhouse. Walking for 15 minutes does not seem capable of dramatically altering a person's health. Saving a small amount of money each week hardly feels like the beginning of financial security. Yet human behavior is not shaped primarily by isolated actions. It is shaped by patterns. Consider the difference between a single day and an entire year. Missing one workout is insignificant. Eating one unhealthy meal is hardly catastrophic. Spending one evening scrolling through social media does not ruin a person's productivity. The difficulty arises when an isolated behavior becomes repetitive and eventually automatic. A small action, repeated hundreds of times, can gradually become a powerful force. This is where habits become particularly fascinating from a scientific perspective. Much of human behavior is governed by processes that operate below the level of conscious decision-making. Once a behavior becomes habitual, the brain can perform it with relatively little deliberate thought. This is efficient because conscious attention is a limited resource. If we had to reconsider every familiar action, ordinary life would quickly become exhausting. Habits therefore function partly as a form of mental automation. They allow the brain to conserve cognitive energy by turning repeated behaviors into predictable routines. The same mechanism, however, can make destructive habits remarkably persistent. A sedentary evening can become a routine, and a routine can gradually become a lifestyle. The reverse can also happen. A few minutes of reading before bed can eventually develop into a stable intellectual practice. Perhaps the most important insight behind atomic habits is that consistency often matters more than intensity. Modern culture tends to celebrate spectacular transformations. We admire people who lose enormous amounts of weight, run marathons, master languages, or build successful businesses. What we rarely see is the mundane repetition behind these achievements. The ordinary mornings, the unremarkable practice sessions, and the days when motivation was absent but the routine continued anyway. This challenges another popular assumption, that motivation is the primary engine of personal development. Motivation is powerful, but it fluctuates with sleep, stress, mood, and circumstances. A system based entirely on motivation is therefore vulnerable. Habits can reduce the amount of motivation required to act. The environment in which we live can also influence our behavior more than we realize. If someone wants to read more, leaving a book beside the bed creates a subtle invitation to read. If they want to eat less junk food, keeping it out of the house removes a temptation before it becomes a conscious struggle. If they want to exercise in the morning, preparing their clothes the night before reduces the number of decisions required when they wake up. There is also a deeper psychological dimension. Repeated actions can gradually influence how people perceive themselves. Someone who writes every day may eventually begin to think of themselves as a writer. Someone who regularly studies a foreign language may start to regard themselves as a language learner. Identity, in this sense, is not entirely something we discover. It can also be something we construct through repeated behavior. Of course, atomic habits are not a magical formula for success. Small improvements cannot eliminate illness, economic hardship, unexpected tragedies, or circumstances beyond individual control. Human lives are shaped by social, economic, and biological forces as well as individual choices. Nevertheless, The principle remains valuable because it redirects attention from dramatic promises to manageable actions. Instead of asking, "How can I completely transform my life?" we can ask a much smaller question, "What is one behavior I can repeat today?" That question may sound modest, but perhaps that is precisely its strength. A cathedral is built stone by stone, a library book by book, and expertise through thousands of seemingly ordinary moments of practice. Human transformation may work in much the same way. The remarkable lesson of atomic habits is not that small actions are powerful because they are extraordinary. They are powerful precisely because they are ordinary enough to be repeated. Over time, those tiny decisions,